Question. You speak sometimes about underground cities and artificial sunlight. Do you mean something like a hollow Earth with this? Is there a second sun inside our planet? Answer. No, Earth is not really completely hollow, and there is no second sun inside. This story is ridiculous and physically not possible. Even your species should be intelligent not to believe this. Do you know how much mass a sun must have to produce energy and light for a longer time by fusion? Do you really think that there could be a small active sun inside the planet? When I talk about our subterranean home, I talk about large cave systems. The caves you have discovered near to the surface are tiny in comparison to real caves and huge caverns deeper in the earth, in a depth of 2,000 to 8,000 of your meters, but connected within the many hidden tunnels to the surface or to the surface near caves, and we live in large and advanced cities and colonies inside such caves. Major sites of us are beyond the Arctic, the Antarctic, Inner Asia, North America, and Australia. If I talk about artificial sunlight in our cities, I don't mean a real sun, but various technological sources of light, including gravitational sources, which illuminates the caverns and tunnels. There are special cave areas and tunnels with a strong UV light in every city, and we use that to heat our blood. Furthermore, we have also some surface sun places in remote areas, especially in America and Australia. Question. Where can we find such a surface near entry to your world? Answer. Do you really think I will tell you their exact location? If you want to find such an entry, you have to search it by yourself, but I would advise you not to do that. When I came to the surface 4 days ago, I used an entry approximately 300 of your kilometers north from here, near to a large lake, but I doubt that you would be able to find it. There are only a few entries in this part of the world. More are far north and east. As a little advice, if you are in a narrow cave or in a tunnel, or even in something that looks to you like an artificial mine shaft, and as deeper you walk, as smoother appear the walls, and if you feel unusual warm air streaming from the depth, or if you hear the rushing sound of streaming air in a ventilation or elevator shaft, then look for a special kind of artificial and smooth wall somewhere in the cave with a door made of gray metal. If you would be able to open that door, but I doubt this, you would be in a usually round technical room with ventilation systems and elevators to the depth. This is probably an entry to our world. If you have reached this point, you should know that we are now definitely aware of your presence. You are already in big trouble if you have entered the round room, but you should look for one of the 2 reptilian symbols on the walls. If there are no symbols or other symbols, you are maybe in bigger trouble as you think, because not every underground installation belongs to our kind. Some new tunnel systems are operated from alien races, including hostile races. My general advice, if you find yourself in a, for you, strange underground installation, run away as fast as you can. Question. You mentioned earlier that you use the name Lacerta when you are among humans, and that you enjoy to be in the real sun on the surface of the earth. But how can you be among humans? You don't look like us, so anyone will see that you belong to another species. Why has nobody seen and described a being like you if your kind lives already since our creation, together with us, on the same planet? Can you explain that to me? Answer. First, my kind was of course seen and described and worshipped many times in your primitive past. For example, in your religious writings like your Christian Bible. You can find descriptions and even simple drawings of us for also in the southern part of the American continent of various temples. So-called wise men from India and from the Asian mountains have described our species many times in writings, together with other wise men from the African continent. I think we are the most mentioned non-human species, maybe besides the Elohim, in your history. If you don't believe me, have a look at your history and you will see the truth in my words. Your great scientists called the belief in us superstition and religion, and today's intelligent humans have forgotten our presence on the surface in this past. Furthermore, our species is seen even today sometimes from human witnesses in its original shape on Earth or near our surface near entry points and tunnel systems. But fortunately you and your media didn't take the reports of such crazies serious. And that's good for us, and that's the reason why we allow those people to see us as we really are. Some of my species are also in direct contact with human scientists and politicians from the surface, but this is top secret, as you would call it, and nobody of your public knows anything about it. The matter of these meetings is generally the upcoming war with and between the alien species and our assistance in this war. But there is also another explanation why we can walk among you and why you are not able to recognize us. Mimicry. The following may again sound unbelievable and even shocking to you, but as you have asked, I will explain it. I have told you before that we have more advanced mental abilities than your species, and with more advanced, I mean that we are able to use telepathy and telekinesis from our birth on. In fact, mother and newborn child communicate generally with telepathy during the first month, without special training, as you need it to be activating these sleeping parts of your brain. The structure of our brain is a little bit different to yours, and our hypothesis is larger and more active than yours, especially when we are in sunlight. Our own abilities are very strong in comparison to yours, but weak in comparison to the matter string bubble mind forces of some of the alien species on this planet. I was never very good in that mind things, but all have these primary abilities and can use them, for example, for our protection or even for attack. When we are on the surface and we meet human beings, even a large group of them, this makes no difference. All of your minds are like one mind, and we are able to touch their mind and induce them via telepathy the command, "See us as one of your kind." And the weak human mind will accept this order without refusion, and they will see us, despite our reptilian look, as normal humans. I've done this many times, and you weak humans generally see me as an attractive brown-haired woman because I have created this special mimicry image in my mind years ago, and I can induce it into your minds without problems. I've needed to sometimes at the beginning learn how to use the mimicry correctly, but then it is worked nearly automatically, and I can even walk among a group of yours, and nobody will recognize what I am. There is a simple switch. See us as we really are, see us as we want you to see us, in your consciousness, which was placed there from the Elohim when they created your kind, and we can use this switch to convince you that you see humans when you look at us. Other aliens use this switch too. It is easier than you think. When there are meetings between your kind and aliens which seem to look exactly like yours, these aliens have used that switch, and some of the meetings with man-like aliens can also be explained with meetings with my kind. When I met EF for the first time, he saw me also as a normal human woman, and I remember that he was very frightened and shocked when I revealed to him my real appearance. Question: do you mean that you can really make me believe that I talk now with an attractive brown-haired woman who looks human instead of a reptilian being like you? Answer: probably, but I don't think so in your special case. When someone expects to see a human woman instead of me, I can do it without problems with his mind, even with large groups, because nobody expects to see a reptile woman. But I have allowed your mind to see me in my original appearance from our first meeting on, and I have never induced something into your mind. So you have already realized that I'm not human. If I would now try to change it, it would probably lead to an absolute confusion or to unconsciousness, and I don't want to harm you. As I have said, I'm not very good in these things. Question: that's very scary. Can you kill with those abilities? Answer: yes, but it's forbidden. This means not that it was not done in previous times. Questions: have both sexes these abilities? Answer: yes. Question: what about photos? How do you appear on photos? Answer: this is a silly question. I appear on photos as a reptile being because I can't have influence on the photo or the camera itself, but only on the photographer's mind. If he or she would develop this film and show the photos to others, they would see me in my original shape. That's the reason why it is forbidden for our kind to be filmed or photographed, and we must avoid every camera on the surface, and that is difficult, and we were filmed sometimes in the past without our knowledge, especially from certain of your governments and secret agencies. Question: what other commands can you kind of induce into our minds? Something like serve us or obey? Answer: this is again a strange question. We are not your enemy, most of us not. So why should we do this? To answer your question, it depends on the strength of the human mind and on the strength of the sending reptilian. There is no serve us or serve me switch in your mind. So such a command is more difficult to induce. If the human mind and consciousness is weak, and the reptilian inducer is experienced in these things, and was some hours in the sun before he or she tries to do it, then it could probably work for a certain time. There are secret teachings about such things, but I've never learned anything about it. I use my primary abilities for mimicry and for communication with my own kind, and sometimes for other private things, but I've never used it to harm humans or their mind. I would appreciate it if we can end with this topic here. Question: our last question. You've said earlier that you can hide your UFOs. Do you use the same abilities to do this? Answer: yes, but on a technical base. There is a powerful device inside each craft which is able to send an artificial signal to your minds to convince you that you see either nothing but only the sky, or that you see normal aircraft like planes instead of our ships. This isn't used very often because we avoid human public when we move in the atmosphere. If you are able to see our UFOs, it means that the device is either defect or deactivated for some reason. The camouflage effect didn't work on photos. To answer this possible question of you already in advance, but why should someone make a photo of the sky when he could not see anything unusual there? By the way, most of the surface near entry points to our tunnels are hidden with such a device, and your kind will generally see only normal cave walls instead of the door. That's one reason why I've said that I doubt that you will be able to find such a secret door to our world, but it has happened a few times in the past. Question: back to your and our own history. You've mentioned the race of the Elohim who have created our human race. From where did they come, and how did they look like? What had exactly happened when they arrived? Are they our God? Answer: the Elohim came from this universe, from the solar system you called Aldebaran in your maps. They were a very tall humanoid species with usually blonde hairs and a very white skin. They avoided the sunlight because it hurt their skin and eyes. This was absolutely unbelievable for a sun-loving species like us. They seemed to be intelligent and peaceful at the beginning, and we started a more or less friendly communication with them. but later they showed their real intentions and plans. They wanted to evolve the apes to a new breed, and we were a disturbing factor for them on their new zoo planet. At first, they caught around 10,000 or even 20,000 of your simian ancestors, and they left the planet for hundreds of years. When they returned, they brought your now more human ancestors back. Then they left Earth again for some thousands of years, and the primitive pre-humans lived together with us without major problems. They were just afraid of our aircraft and technology. The Elohim had taught their mind and enhanced their brain and their body structure, and they were now able to use tools and fire. The Elohim returned within 23,000 years 7 times and accelerated the evolutionary speed of certain of your kind. You must understand that you are not the first human civilization on the planet. The first advanced humans who lived at the same time with less developed pre-humans, because the Elohim had experimented with different speeds and stages of evolution. With technology and speech existed around 700,000 years ago on this planet. Your scientists have not understood this because they've found only the bones of the pre-humans and some primitive cave drawings showing advanced humans and flying devices. This genetically advanced human breed lived together with us, but they avoided contact with my kind because the Elohim teachers had warned them with misleading purpose that we were evil beings and that we lied to them. Well, after some centuries, the aliens decided to extinct their first creation, and they accelerated the evolution of a second and better test series, and so on and so on. The truth is that your modern human civilization is not the first on this planet Earth, but already the 7th. The buildings of the first breeds are lost, but the 5th civilization was the one which built the large triangular constructions you call Egyptian pyramids. Today, around 75,000 years ago, your Egyptians just found that large ancient pyramids in the sand and tried not very successful to build similar constructions. And the 6th civilization was the one which built the cities which ruins you can find today beneath the sea in the so-called Bimini area around 16,000 years ago. The last creation of the 7th breed of your series was done just 8,500 years ago, and this is the only creation you can remember and to which your religious writings refer. You rely on archaeological and paleontological artifacts which show you a wrong and short past. But how should you know anything about the 6 civilizations before? And if you find evidence for their existence, you deny and misinterpret the facts. This is partly a programming of your mind and partly pure ignorance. I will tell you in the following only about your creations, because the 6 previous mankinds are lost, and therefore they should not concern you. There was a long war between us and the Elohim, and also between certain groups of the Elohim themselves, because many of them were the opinion that the again and again creation of human species on this planet makes no real sense. The last battles in this war were fought around 5,000 years ago in orbit and surface. The aliens used powerful sonic weapons to destroy our underground cities, but on the other hand, we were able to destroy many of their surface installations and bases in space. The humans of your series were very frightened when they observed our battles, and they wrote it in the form of religious myths. Their mind was not able to understand what was really going on. The Elohim, who appeared as gods for the 6th and 7th breed, told them that it is a war between good and evil, and that they are the good and we are the evil race. This depends certainly on the point of view. It was our planet before they arrived, and before they started their evolution project with your kind. In my opinion, it was our right to fight for our planet. It was exactly 4,943 years ago, according to your time scale, that the Elohim left the planet again for unknown reasons. This is a very important date for us, because many of our historians called it a victory. Fact is that we don't know what had really happened. The Elohim were gone from one day to another. They vanished without a trace, together with their ships, and we found most of their surface installations destroyed by them. The humans were on their own, and your civilization developed. Many of us were in contact with certain more southern tribes of your species in the coming centuries, and we were able to convince some of them that we are not evil the aliens wanted them to believe. During the time from 4,900 years ago to today, many other alien species arrived to the planet. Some of them used the old teaching and programming of your mind and played again God for you. But the Elohim themselves never came back. They had left the planet for a duration of some 1,000 years or so earlier, so we expect their return one day in future to end their project or to maybe extinct also the seventh breed, but we really don't know what has happened to them to answer this question of yours in advance. Your current civilization doesn't know anything about your real origin, about your real past, about your real world and universe, and you know very little about us and our past. And you know nothing about the things to come in near future. As long as you will not understand and believe my words, I tell you the truth because we are not your enemy. As long as there is danger for your species. Your enemies are already here and you have not understood. Open your eyes, or you will be in big trouble soon. If you haven't believed any of the things that I have told you before, then you should really believe and remember this. Question: why do you think I don't believe you? Answer: I have a certain feeling that you don't believe me, despite the fact that I'm sitting here in front of you. Everything I have told you in the last 2 hours is the absolute truth about our world. Question: how many alien species are active on Earth at the moment? Answer: as far as we know, 14 species, 11 from this universe, 2 from another bubble, and 1 very advanced from a very different plane. Don't ask me for names because nearly all are not pronounceable for you. 8 of them are not pronounceable even for us. Most of the species, especially the more advanced, are just studying you as animals, and they are not very dangerous for you, or for us, and we work together with some of them. But 3 species are hostile, including the one which was in contact with some of your governments and exchanged their technology for copper and other important things, and which had betrayed your kind. There was and is a cold war between these 2 hostile races during the last 73 years, and the 3rd species seems to be the winner in this useless struggle. We expect a more hot war between them and you in the near future. I would say in the next 20 or 10 of your years, and we are worried about that development. In the last time, there were some rumors about a new 15th species which had arrived on Earth just 3 or 4 years ago, but we don't know anything about their intentions, and we were not in contact with them till now. Maybe the rumors are wrong. Question: what do the hostile alien races want? Answer: various raw materials, including copper for their technology, your water, or better the hydrogen in your water, which is a source of energy in advanced fusion processes, and certain chemical elements in your air. Furthermore, 2 of the species are also interested in your body, in your human tissue and blood, because their own genetic structure is defect through bad evolution and radiation. as far as we know, and they need intact strings from your kind and from animals to repair their own genetics again and again, but they are not really able to repair the defects completely because their DNA and your DNA is not fully compatible. My own species is absolutely incompatible with them, so they are not very interested in us, and they try to make more compatible crossbreeds between you and them by the use of artificial fertilizations and artificial wombs. We suppose that the coming war between the three races, or between you and one or all of them, will be fought for raw material, hydrogen, air, and DNA. Question: is this the reason for the abductions? Answer: partly, especially when the aliens took egg and sperm samples from you. Sometimes the abductors belong to another and more advanced race, and they just want to study your body and your mind, which is more interesting for some of them than your solid body, as you would study a primitive animal. As I have said, 3 alien species are hostile, and this means that they do not care for your fate or for your life, and people who were abducted by them came very rarely back alive. If someone is able to report about an abduction, it means, in my opinion, that he or she has not met one of the aggressive species, or that he or she is very, very lucky as a human to be alive. Advanced and friendly races also took some egg and sperm samples, but for other reasons. Question: you've said there are only 14 species active on Earth, but why describe people who saw alien beings so many different and bizarre types of them? Answer: I think I have already answered to this question. As I have said, most of the alien races have much more advanced mind abilities than you or even me. There is just one alien race completely without such abilities. They are able to appear in your mind and memory as whatever they want, and this induced image has nothing to do with their real appearance. You remember them as normal humans, or grey dwarfs, or even extremely bizarre animals because they want you to remember that, or sometimes they want you to completely forget anything about a meeting with them. Another example. You can, for example, remember that you were just in a normal of your human hospitals, and that some of the doctors were examining you, and you think not further about what had happened to you, maybe till you discover that there is no hospital in the street you were supposed to be in. But in fact, you were examined by them in one of their laboratories. You can't rely on your mind in this case. They appear in different shapes to you to confuse you and to make so-called abduction witnesses who are able to remember the events, or who believe that they are able to remember, ridiculous in the public, and as far as we know, they are successful. Believe me, there are only 14 alien species on this planet, and only 8 of them abduct humans at the moment, as far as we know. In addition, not every one of your abductees is one, and some of the aliens in their reports are really just imaginations or lies. Question: how can we protect us against this influence on our mind? Answer: I don't know. I doubt you can, because your mind is like an open book to read and write for nearly every species I know. This is partly the guilty of the Elohim themselves, because they had constructed, or better misconstructed, partly intentionally, your mind and your conscience without real protection mechanisms. If you are aware that someone tries to manipulate your mind, you can only concentrate on that suspicion and try to analyze every one of your thoughts and memories. Very important. Don't close your eyes. This would lead to a different form of brainwaves, which are more easy to access. And don't sit or lay down to rest. If you stay awake during the first minutes, you can maybe try to filter some other thoughts and waves in your brain, and the inducer will give up after some minutes if he or she is not successful, because it will start to hurt his or her own brain. This is very difficult and certainly painful, and it can harm you, so better don't try to resist, but it would be the only possibility you have. However, you can try this only with the more weaker species, not with the strong. Question: what do you mean with one species comes from a different plane? Answer: before I can explain that correctly to you, you must be able to understand the universe, and this would mean a maybe useless teaching of your mind, including the removal of some barriers, of many weeks, and with teaching I mean not only teaching by words. I have said this with your plane or level, because, again, you have no better word in your vocabulary, and dimension would be, in this case, absolutely wrong. It's rather wrong even for another bubble, because a dimension can't exist without planes. If you would be a species living in another or over the plane, and if you would be furthermore able to enter planes without technology, so that your body is not made of that kind of matter you know, then you would be the mightiest being you can imagine. This very advanced race I've mentioned had developed outside of here, and they've evolved in fact over billions of years. They would be able to destroy all of you and us and everything with just a single thought. We were in contact with them only 3 times in our whole history, because their interest in your planet is different from that of all other races. They are definitely no danger for you or us. Question: what will happen when the war begins? Answer: this is difficult to answer. It depends on the enemy race and on their tactic. War is not always that primitive thing you humans mean with the word war. War can be fought on various levels. One possibility they have is the destruction of your social system by influence on political leaders. Another is the use of advanced weapon systems, which can cause earthquakes or volcanic eruptions or other disasters, including weather disasters, which may seem natural to you. The special fields from copper fusion I've mentioned earlier are able to have an influence on your global weather. I think they will not attack the planet directly before the human civilization is weak, because even you have possibilities to destroy their craft, but not many. Let me say that we are not absolutely sure if there will be really such a hot war already in the next years. I don't want to talk further about this. Question: this is the end of the interview. Do you want to say a last sentence or message? Answer: open your eyes and see. Don't believe only in your wrong history or your scientists or your politicians. Some of them know the truth about various things, but they don't inform the public to avoid confusion and panic. I think your species is not as bad as some of my kind thinks, and it would be a pity to observe your end. That's everything I can say. Go through your world with open eyes, and you will see, or maybe not. Your kind is ignorant. Question: do you think anyone will believe that this interview is the truth? Answer: no, but it is an interesting experiment for my social studies. We will meet again in some months, and you will tell me then what have happened after the publication of my message. Maybe there is hope for your kind. The Lacerta File Part 2. Introduction. I once again reaffirm that the following text is the absolute truth and is not fiction. It was composed from 3 original tape recordings, which were made on April 24, 2000, with the tape recorder during my second interview with the reptilian creature known as Lacerta. At Lacerta's request, The original text of 31 pages was revised and shortened up to deal with some questions and answers. Some existing questions were partially shortened or amended. It was even undertaken to extract message and significance from it. This part of the interview, either not mentioned or not mentioned completely in its transcript, deals primarily with personal issues, paranormal demonstrations, the social system of the reptilian species, and alien technology and physics. The reason for the shifting of the date and time of the second meeting was a possible observation and surveillance of my own person after the publication of the first transcript. Although everything was attempted on the advice of Lacerta to keep my identity a secret, just 2 days after the dissemination of the document abroad and various unusual events took place. Please don't think that I am paranoid. However, I believe that the publication of the interview has drawn either official attention or the attention of some organization to me. Up until this time, I usually regarded people who believed that they were being followed by the state to be nothing more than jokers. But now I have begun to revise my ideas on that since events in January. It began with a failure of my telephone for several hours. When the phone became operational once again, there were quite echoes and strange clicking and whirring sounds when I made calls. A defect could, ostensibly, not be found anywhere. Overnight, important data disappeared from the hard drive in my computer. The testing program reported defective sectors, where strangely enough, there were only data which dealt with illustrations and completed textual material from the interview. These defective sectors also contain material of a paranormal nature in the field of my research. Fortunately, the material was also stored on floppies. In addition, I discovered by pure chance some hidden data in a likewise hidden directory index. The name which appeared on the data and the directory index was E72UJ. A friend, who is a computer expert, could not make anything of this designation, and when I was about to show it to him, the directory index had disappeared. One evening, my apartment door was standing wide open, my TV set was running, and I am absolutely confident that I had turned the TV set off. A minivan with British markings and the imprint of a Europe-wide supermarket chain parked in front of my house. I noticed the same minivan again on several occasions, traveling at a distance behind my car, even when I visited the town of ... 65 kilometers away. When I returned, the car was on the other side of the street once again. I never saw anyone get into or out of the car. A knock on the door of the vehicle and on the tinted windows caused no reaction of any kind. After about 2 weeks, the minivan disappeared again. When I informed EF personally about these events, he suggested that I change the place and date of the meeting in order to assure our own and Lacerta's safety. The meeting took place on April 27, 2000, in another isolated location. It was unobserved as far as I can determine. Once again, all of this may sound strange and paranoid, like a fantasy from a cheap science fiction film. However, I can only repeat to and assure the reader once again, all of this is the unadulterated truth. Believe my words or don't believe them. These things have happened and they will continue to happen, whether you believe it or not, until it is too late. Our civilization is in danger. Ole K, May 3rd, 2000. Transcript of the interview. Shortened version. Date of interview, April 27, 2000. Comment by Ole K. The meeting began with an appraisal of diverse questions and opinions which I had gotten from readers of the first transcript in anonymous fashion through distribution from my trustworthy friends. Some of these opinions, altogether there were over 14 pages of paper, contain comments shaped by everything from a radically religious to a fanatical tendency to welcome contact with reptilian species. Some of these comments contain stereotypical phrases like servants of hell or species of the evil one. I don't want to go into any kind of detailed description here, since I don't want to pass on further any false or radical realm of thought. Question: when you read these religious and animosity-ridden comments here, what do you think and feel then? Is the relationship between your species and ours really shaped from that kind of total negation? Answer: does it amaze you that I am not completely angered by that? I had fully expected those kinds of extreme reactions. The programming for the utter negation of another species, especially the reptilian species, as in your own case, is deeply embedded in each of your own individual consciousnesses. This ancient conditioning stems from the days of your third artificial creation, and biologically speaking, is passed down as an information genome from generation to generation. The identification of my species with the powers of darkness was a primary intention of the Elohim, who like seeing themselves in the role of the powers of light, something which in and of itself represents a paradox, since that humanoid species was extremely sensitive to your sunlight. In case you were expecting me to act offended, I guess I'll have to partially disappoint you. These obscure intentions are not really your own fault. You are simply following, for the most part, what you have inherited from your ancestors. It is indeed actually somewhat disappointing that many of you develop no especially strong individual self-conscience, for this would help you to overcome the conditioning. As I have already said, we were in direct contact in the last several centuries with some of your more primitive human tribes. These tribes had themselves succeeded in breaking through the old creation programming. They were able to meet us without tension, hate, and total rejection. Apparently, many of your modern civilized individuals are not in a position to think on their own, but rather let themselves be guided by programming and religion, which is also a manifestation of the ancient programming and part and parcel of the plan of the Elohim. Therefore, comments of that kind I'd sooner regard as amusing than irritating. They simply confirm in large measure for me many my suppositions about your defined mode of thinking. Question: therefore, you are not the species of the evil one, as was remarked earlier. Answer: how am I supposed to answer that? Your people still think according to a simple and completely inappropriate scheme of generalizations. Simply put, there are absolutely no purely evil species. There exists in every terrestrial and extraterrestrial species alike, both good and evil individuals. It's even true of your own people, but there is no such thing as an absolutely evil species. This conception is really very primitive. You people have believed from time immemorial what you are supposed to believe, what was foreseen for you to believe by your creators. Every well-known species, even the more highly developed ones, consist of a great number of individual consciousnesses. At least a portion of the consciousness is individual, even though there are connecting fields of consciousness. These self-sufficient spirits are able to decide freely for themselves a lifestyle which is either good or evil, according to your own human standards. It depends again on the respective point of view. Your people are not necessarily in a position to judge whether the deeds of a much more highly developed species are good or evil, because you stand at a lower observation point, from which an assessment is not possible. Your simple words good and evil are in any cases examples of a tendency towards generalization. In my language, there are many concepts for the various shades of meaning of individual behaviors in comparison to the norms of a society. Even though extraterrestrial species, which are inclined to act with antagonism towards you, are not the species of the evil one, even though they operate negatively with respect to your own race. They do this for their own reasons and do not regard themselves as evil. Were your structured way of thinking more linear and focused as theirs is, then you would also behave in such a fashion. The attitude of a species towards other kinds of existence naturally depends very heavily on its respective structured way of thinking. Each species sets its own priorities. To classify that as good or evil is really quite primitive, for the survival of any species argues for many varieties, among them your own, as well as for even the most varied of the worst or negatively directed deeds. I won't even exclude my own kind in this regard, for there have been certain occurrences in the past which I don't personally welcome, but about which I would also not like to go into detail. None of these occurrences have happened in the last 200 years of your time scale, but please note the following. There are no absolutely good and there are no absolutely bad species, because each and every species always consists of individuals. Question. In the letters that I have got, there was often the question whether you could go into any great detail regarding the advanced physics that you commented on last time. Many people said your words made no sense. For example, how do UFOs function? How do they fly? How do they perform the maneuvers that they do? Answer. I ought to explain that to people? That's not all that simple. Let me think about it for a minute. I always have to use very simple words in order to make clear to you the basic principles of a higher kind of science. Let's try this. You have to be clear about some fundamental facts. The very first thing is that you must divide up the conception of the physical world, because each existence consists of different layers. Let's say, for simplicity's sake, that it consists of a material illusion and a sphere of influence. Translator's note. No legitimate translation exists for the word Feldraum. Feld means field, and Raum means space, room, expanse. Therefore, I'm translating it as sphere of influence. Certain physical conditions are associated only with the realm of material, while other and more complicated conditions are associated only with the sphere of influence of the material world. Your conception of the physical world is based upon the simple material illusion. That illusion is further subdivided into three elementary or basic conditions of matter. A fourth and very important condition also exists, which you simply pay attention to more or less as you choose. It is the one bordering on the sphere of influence or plasma realm. For you, the theory for a controlled transformation or an elevation of the frequency of matter and the stable existence of this fourth aggregate condition of matter is not very common, or it exists at a very primitive level. As an aside, there are simply 5 states of matter, but the post-plasma state would really be going too far, and it would only serve to confuse you. Besides, it is not necessary for an understanding of the basic theory. It is connected with diverse phenomena, which you would characterize as paranormal. Now, back to the essentials. Plasma now. With plasma, I don't mean just hot gas, as the concept is generally simplified by your people, but rather I mean a higher aggregate condition of matter. The plasma state of matter is a special form of matter which lies between its real existence and the sphere of influence, that is, a complete loss of mass and pure accretion of energy of various form whenever matter is pushed or shoved. The fourth state of matter is very important for the certain physical conditions which can be used, for example, to, how should I express this to you, generate anti-gravity. That's a rather strange human word and not really correct, but you ought to understand it better this way. Essentially, in the world of real physics, there are no bipolar forces, but rather only observer-dependent reflective behavior of a single large unified force at different levels. With anti-gravity, or the displacement of gravitational characteristics into levels, one can, for example, cause apparently solid matter to levitate. This method is employed partly by us and by extraterrestrials, as well as a means of propulsion for their UFOs. You people are moving on a really primitive level toward a similar principle for your secret military projects. But since you have more or less stolen this technology, and it was later falsely passed on to you intentionally by the extraterrestrials, you lack the real physical understanding. As a result, you have to struggle with problems of instability and radiation with your UFOs. According to my information, there have been a great number of deaths of your people because of intense radiation and field disturbances. Don't you agree this is also an example of the business regarding the question of good and evil? You people play with unknown forces and thereby accept the death of colleagues of your own kind, for they are dying for a greater cause, namely, for the advancement of your technology, which as a result is being put into place once again for the purpose of war, or, for example, negative pursuits. Now, one can give you the benefit of the doubt that only the least number of your kind have any knowledge about these alien projects, which are, as you explain it, top secret. It was told to you that the higher the ordinal or ranking number of basic matter, the simpler the heightening of the condition, but that is only partially correct. If you can't circumvent these powers, then you're better off not attempting it. But your kind has always been ignorant and has from time immemorial tried to play around with forces which you have not even understood. Why would that ever change?